Amen. Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me? You can hear me. Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you. With all this technology, we praise God from whom all blessings flow because it is good to see everybody online this afternoon. So, to the presenters, the officers, members, family, and friends and neighbors of each organization represented and each household represented today, to our own National Association of Negro Business and Professional Women's Clubs Incorporated, to the national, district, and local officers that are online. The National Association of Negro Business and Professional Women's Clubs Incorporated, which was founded in 1935 by a group of women who saw the need to create a forum in which to promote the interests of African Americans, back then known as Negroes, Negro business and professional women in their various professions. We are located internationally with approximately 200 clubs in the United States alone. We strive to bring programs of interest that will benefit our communities in leadership, entrepreneurship, technology, health, education, employment, and economic development. Today, we will present to you our program on emergency preparedness. We hope that you will enjoy and take serious what is being presented. We planned the program with you in mind. So, on behalf of the National Association of Negro Business and Professional Women's Clubs Incorporated, the Williamsbridge Club, the Bronx Club, the New Rochelle Club, the New York Club, and the Riverside Club, we extend greetings. Thank you.
Is Enmod available?
I didn't see her online.
Here she comes.
Yes, good afternoon. Welcome everyone to the Consortium National Business Professional Women's Clubs Incorporated Emergency Preparedness. Get ready, stay ready. I am Enmod Agmeni, and I'm the membership director for the Williamsbridge Club. So I just want to bring you a few icebreakers. Let's just break the ice and get used to just get some of things flowing. So I want to ask you a question first. Now, number one, what is just one word that comes to mind that describes to you emergency preparedness? Now, we changed our format a little bit, so we were hoping to see in the chat a great flurry of different things that would come to you regarding emergency preparedness. And but just think about what would come to you as emergency preparedness. Think of one word. When I think of emergency preparedness, I think of necessary. I'm sure our president would have some other comments, but that's one of the words that I would think of. Now, I'd ask you another question as we go along there, and you guys could put it in the chat in YouTube. You could put in the chat there, in the comments there. One word, or the second question I have to ask you is, what would what one now we all know we have to have a go bag, right? Now in that go bag, there's got to be some snacks in there. What one snack would you have in your go bag that you must have, that if you don't have it in your go bag, you won't be able to go. What is that? Now, me, probably a granola bar, but I'm going to tell you really what I'm thinking about. Those little travel packs of nori. I know you can't put many of those in your go bag, but man, they hit the spot, and you can eat a lot of them, and it doesn't have a lot of calories. So for me, who's always a little bit calorie conscious, right? So what snack would you have to have? Oh, I probably also would love to have a Snickers bar in there. Okay, it's totally opposite from the bag of nori, but I would love to have a Snickers bar, definitely. Okay, let's see. Oh, peanut butter and granola. Okay, and what our president Joetta has said is that the one word that comes to mind to her is be prepared. Be prepared, absolutely, as well as planning. Those are two really excellent words when you think about emergency preparedness. Now, we also have, as a snack, peanut butter and granola. That's a good one. Gives you lots of energy and very stabilizing. Okay, I'm going to ask you one more question to see how would you do with emergency preparedness. So, this is very important just as we're getting ready to launch into our program. I want you to rate on a scale of 1 to 5. What do you rank yourselves as being prepared for an emergency? On a scale of 1 to 5, now 5 being the most prepared, 1 being not prepared. What would you rank yourself as being prepared? I think I would put myself as a 4. There's a couple of things that I have in place, but not everything. So, we have President Joetta is saying she's a 3. Now, I don't know. I might have to reevaluate if she's a 3, but okay. And we also have our sister Renee Paris Scott, who's also said she's a 3, which is good because at least we're there. We could strike into the range of where we need to be. So, we definitely want to keep going forward and getting things in place. I know one of the things that I'm still working on is fully packing my go bag. Sometimes you can make something so simple so complicated. It's really not that complicated. But I know after today, I want to have everything I need to make sure that I get ready and stay ready. I might be checking back with you a little later on in the program. So I appreciate you being here, and we look forward to having a wonderful, fulfilling program and each of us learning more. I know next up on our agenda is, which I don't have directly in front of me, but next up on our agenda is the importance of emergency preparedness. So our president, Joetta Brown, is going to bring you that greeting and that information because it's a very important thing, particularly in these days and times. Hey, President.
Good afternoon again, everyone. And again, I'm going to change hats a little bit from the National Association of Negro Business and Professional Women's Clubs Incorporated to greetings from the Morrisania community, SBEN, CERT Division 1, Office of Emergency Management, New York City Department of Mental Health, Community Board 3, and the person who speaks after me will go into a little bit more depth about each one of those organizations. In the past several weeks, we have had serious reminders from storms Ida and this week's rain, which caused flooding in flood-prone areas. In some instances, we had to participate in cleaning catch basins. In preparing for emergencies, weather events, whether it's heat, cold, electrical, food shortage, etc., we find that we have to be prepared on many fronts. Essentially, we need to be aware of ourselves, where we are, and where we want to go. and we have to be concerned about our homes and our families. Today's discussion is an introduction to the communities that we are able to reach, to join with one another to begin the critical input into community awareness. First, there is communication. Wally Abdur Noor, South Bronx Emergency Network, who has been involved in preparedness since 2011. And before preparedness, he was involved in communication, communication, and communication. Today, we will move forward in the discussion, in the communication discussion, from contacting your neighbor, your family, to beginning the communication with city services, such as the Department of Education, NYPD, FDNY, EMS, sanitation, merchants association, tenant associations, and etc., so that everyone is sitting around the same table as the conditions that affect our communities. And up next will be Keziah Norman, who will explain the links of SBEN, HEN, CERT, and CERN.
Keziah, you are on mute.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to reiterate everything I just said. My name is Keziah Glow as well. I'm a talk show radio host for WHCR 90.3 FM. And today I'm coming underneath the hat of preparedness. As Joetta mentioned, preparedness is so important. And so it's important that we remember these things, such as our go bags, our emergency contacts. When the emergency happens, we're ready for it, right? So SBEN was created. It was a think tank with Wally and Department of Mental Health and Hygiene. They came together and decided that we needed an emergency plan. Now, an emergency plan, you may say, why is that important? An emergency plan is very important because you want to create, develop, maintain, update, and implement this plan when the disaster happens. You don't want to wait until you need to figure out how many beds or how much emergency supplies we have on the day of the emergency. You want to know this information in advance. And it takes a lot of strategic planning to put this information together. So we have been working on creating maps, building with different organizations, creating community partnerships. And it's been taking a lot of work, but we're working hard. We have a website, which you can go to SBEN D3, which stands for South Bronx Emergency Network for District 3. We're working on our Facebook page. You can go to SBEN D3 for South Bronx Emergency Network D3. So I'm not going to take any more time. I'm going to give it over to Wally, and he can give you a taste as to what SBEN is really all about.
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming out. Before I get started, include what we were talking about as far as the different organizations. SBEN came out of a combination of Citizens Emergency Response Network, Harlem Emergency Network, WHCR Broadcast Emergency Network, New York City Emergency Network, excuse me, New York City Emergency Management, and New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. Each of these organizations have made emergency management of emergency a important part agenda of what they are doing, and something that they all seem to have come to the realization is that there's something new in emergency preparedness called community preparedness and response. Most folks on this line are familiar with emergency preparedness on a personal level, to go back, make a plan, shelter in place, but you can only do that for a period of time. You know, after 3, 4, 5, 7 days, that runs out. And these emergencies, the way they are happening, they can go for weeks, months, and even possibly years. So we have a choice now of two things: either being a victim or being a responder. Because if an emergency happens that affects the entire city, it may be a while before you see any help coming your way. And in order to get any kind of response, you have to have communications. So, as Keziah said, emergency network developing a community emergency plan. It's a new concept in this area. Places like California, where they have the fires, and down south where they have the floods, they have already been into this. But in the New York area, we have been fortunate not to have those real bad situations. And so we're not used to the community coming together in an emergency response. Maybe, a couple of friends or something like that, or family or individual does it, but not as a community. So this is a whole new concept that is in this metropolitan area. So in order to have any kind of emergency response, you got to have communications. So part of our plan starts out with that. So we're in Bronx District 3. So this is a map of the Bronx. And here's District 3 in 12 districts in the Bronx. And these districts are the same as the community boards. Okay? What is the need for a community emergency response plan? Studies have shown that how connected a community is before an emergency or disaster defines how quickly and successfully the community recovers. A connected community understands its physical and social environment and has established communication networks and knows how best to use the existing resources. Communities with strong social ties are able to communicate, identify needs, and coordinate resources more effectively, even during normal times. Okay, we have a thing called social capital. That's a word that hasn't been used quite a bit, but it's starting to show. And basically, what social capital is informal ties that connect us and provide resources during a disaster. Informal ties like, fire department, the police department, government agencies, elected officials, large corporations, Con Edison, Verizon, authority figures. I would say figure. The what we call vertical ties. These are places that you can get resources. You don't have a contract with them, but you have an understanding. This is what you have. And so this is vertical ties. There's also something called horizontal ties, which we'll talk about a little later. Okay. Effective communications during emergency is critical to any emergency response and recovery. We have to make sure that we're able to receive official information from official government sources of information, such as radio and TV, news, and weather channels, emails, social media, and cell phones. Now, you say, well, I come to this event to be told about radio and TV. I listen to the news all the time. Well, that may be, but there's a whole generation that don't even listen to the radio. They don't radio any attention. They get everything off their cell phone and the computer. Okay, the TV and the radio is something from what they call old school. During an emergency, rumors and outdated can spread quickly. Incorrect information will lead to bad decisions that can put us and our community in danger, and it can cause lives. Okay, here in New York City, Notify New York is the official source of emergency information from New York City, from the New York City Emergency Management, from the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, and other government agencies. And this is how you can get the information from Notify New York. You can go to the website, you can go to Twitter, you can sign up on 311, and you can go to the Play Store and get a phone app for your get an app for your phone. Okay. Now you have something called the Advanced Warning System. That's communication strategies for people with vision or hearing disability or those with limited English proficiency. You sign up for that either for text or voice at www.advancedwarningsystemnewyorkcity.org. Okay? New York City severe weather. So if you know that there's going to be some weather coming, this is a place where you can formal information. Okay. The government uses mainstream media to disseminate information. Radio station WABC 770 on the AM dial. Most of us don't even listen to AM anymore. All your news and information is on AM. If you're listening to FM, 10 to 1, you're listening to music, you're listening to a talk show, but that's not the place to be trying to find out what emergency, if you're in an emergency, what the information is going on. WINS 1010 and NOAA. NOAA is the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. It's a federal weather channel. That's the Federal Weather Channel Network. And that's where just about everyone in the United States gets their weather from. Okay? And cable TV, you got CNN, Fox, ABC, NBC, the Weather Channel, etc., News 1 and News 12. In your area, this is in the New York area. If you are watching this from a city, someplace else, you need to start to look to see where these news stations are, where you're getting news most of the time. Wherever, just about every city in the United States has them, and you need to know where it is, because when it's time, you don't want to be fumbling to try to figure out where to go. And you also want to purchase one of these emergency radios, like this radio to the right. They're very inexpensive these days. Years ago when they came out, they were expensive. Now they're very cheap. With them, you get light, you get FM, you even get some of them even shortwave on them. And what shortwave is radio stations outside of the United States. They have them with solar power so that it just doesn't work on batteries. But you should have a radio of this type, because getting the information, they're usually waterproof. Like I say, they have flashlights. A lot of people say, well, I got a flashlight on my phone. Well, if the phone system is working, you don't want to be using up your phone battery with your flashlight. You need a flashlight. So here's a place where you can get a flashlight, a radio, and communications and power. They have them with power to recharge your phone, and I wouldn't say recharge your laptop, because that would take a lot larger radio, but at least you can recharge your phone. So that's an investment. That the holidays are coming up. That's something that you can get for a person. They even have a battery charger for those that you want to give a gift to, that has a light and battery charger, charges your phone, charges your laptop, all of that. And the type of gifts I think that people are thinking about giving. Okay. Other means that the government use for official information, government training, seminars, and symposiums. Preparedness brochures. How many people have had those brochures and they just take them and either drop them in a corner somewhere in your house, collecting dust? They need to be read. There's a lot of information in them. Community board meetings. A lot of information is passing through the community board. You find out what's going on in your neighborhood. You need to know that in advance. Political meetings and town hall meetings. This is some place where you can put your opinion in. You know, a place like that is what we're doing like now. Where do all these official sources get their information from? Well, there's something called the Integrated Public Alert and Warning System. They call it IPAWS. This is a system that the nation's infrastructure are in networks. IPAWS ensures that the president can alert and warn the public under any condition. Additionally, IPAWS will provide federal, state, territorial, tribal, and local authorities the abilities to alert and warn their communities of all hazards impacting public safety and well-being via multiple communications paths. Now, what is all that about? This is a diagram of the system, like you're watching your TV and you go here, bam, 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 bam. This is a diagram of the system that is used. The first part of the system to the left is what they call the alerting authorities, the local Local meaning Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, Department of Emergency Management, the mayor's office. That's local. State, your governor. Governors. Indian tribes have their own agreements with the government, and you have the federal government. So these are the places where local these are the places where the information comes from. Okay, and then that's fed into a place that authenticates the information and also distributes it to the area that it needs to go to, because something that comes in locally or in the state, let's say of LA, California, you don't need to hear about that right away in New York City. So if all of this is being fed into one place here, it has to be distributed correctly. That's what this element does. And then this divides it into the different of entities that transmit the alerts. So this top one here is the alert system that goes to your TV that you hear. That's that one. This is the one that goes to your phone. You know, if you signed up on let's say Notify NYC or something like that, those alerts come on this level here. Then you have alerts that come on the internet. Then you have your weather channels, either by radio or by TV from the NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Okay? And then, excuse me, I didn't quite finish before I jumped back there. Then the state and local alerting system, something of a lost child, somebody missing persons, that type of thing. Indications of information on this is what this part is about. So this whole chain is divided up into different aspects to send out the information. This is over here. 1, 2, the television, your phone, your computer, your weather channel, and the different Irenes, your phone, your landline phone, different things where
Wally,
information can be sent. So this is
Wally,
basically.
Wally, excuse me, I want to
Go
jump
ahead.
in for a second because we're not really seeing everything on the PowerPoint. So I think you need to kind of click those side buttons so we can see the slides that you're seeing.
Oh boy. All right. Got you. So you seeing anything now?
Was just seeing the first slide. So there's something you can click. If you can, we can see the current slides that you're talking about. We're not seeing those.
Oh boy. Okay.
All right, now we are. So
all right. I'm gonna have to go.
Yeah, you got to go.
Okay.
Why don't you kind of go through those kind of quickly, because you talked about them, so we can look at them, but we don't want to go through everything one by one. But I think you can kind of quickly bring us up to speed if you click through them.
Okay. I'll just go back here to where I talked about the radio. This is the radio that I was talking about. I'm sorry that you didn't see it. Thank you, Bob. And these are the channels in New York, like I said. But if you're not in New York, you need to find out where the news channels are where you live. Official, you can, like we said, you can deal with brochures, community board meetings, political meetings, town hall meetings. That's where you can also get information. All right, now this is where I was talking about the iPods. I'll just go straight to it. Okay, over here on your left is the alerting areas that I was talking about. This here is the area that distributes the information to the correct regions that they should go to, because everything is coming in here and going in here. So here has to be able to know that this came from California, and the information over here has to be going to California and not to New York. And this is just the entity that sets up the information to go to the television, to go to your phone, to go to your internet. This goes to the channels on your radio, the weather channels, and this is the unique information. Okay. Okay, we talked about vertical bonding, which we talked was elected officials, government organizations, large corporations, and whatnot. But what's really kind of important is this horizontal bonding. Local communities between community stakeholders, credible messengers, and local resources are extremely important. In a major emergency affecting the entire city, government assistance may be slow arriving or not at all. Local responders become first responders. I'll read that again. In a major emergency affecting the entire city, government assistance may be slow arriving or even not at all. Local responders become first responders. In such cases, community stakeholders, credible messengers, and local resources must be able to communicate. Because if you're going to respond, you got to be able to communicate. So this is kind of the same diagram that we had before. Only thing, this time we're talking about the horizontal the horizontal social capital, and this is very important. Here we're seeing, stakeholders in different areas, and here we have them labeled Division A, Division B, C, and D. These are areas, these are like neighborhoods, okay? I'll give you an example of what we're talking about. This is a diagram of Bronx District 3, Community Board 3, and it's divided into 4 parts. Now, the people that live in this area down here near 161st Street probably are not that interested in what's going on up here near the Cross Bronx Expressway. And also the people that's over near the Cross Bronx Expressway is probably not interested in what's going on down here on 159th Street. But all these areas are in Community Board 3, District 3. So what we've done is divide them up so that a person is more the areas that they're interested in are the areas that they are working in, so that a person up here is not being bored with what's going on down here or disinterested. They're interested in their neighborhood. Okay, and these divisions are the same divisions that they're taken from the precinct sector uh, divisions that the 42nd precinct has. So rather than us reinvent the wheel, we just use their sectors, and we just call them divisions because in emergency management, when you talk about geographic areas, you divide them in divisions and not sectors. But it's basically the same thing. In conclusion, there are many organizations, houses of worship, institutions, etc., that are doing fantastic emergency work in District 3, especially during this pandemic. A lot of organizations have really been doing a lot of good work. However, let's keep in mind that there's almost 80,000 people in Bronx District 3. In an emergency, that affects the entire city. No one group, not even the government, can effectively respond to the needs of that many people alone by themselves. Even the government needs help. If we come out of our silos, we like to say that, that's kind of a term, organizations work by themselves, keeping their trade secrets, and start to plan and work together, putting our different abilities, resources, and skills, we will make a difference between life and death, mitigate losses, and recover in the shortest possible time. So this is basically the new concept of community emergency response. Now, on the flyer, it says what you're going to do when the lights go out, how you're going to communicate. Well, when we in South Bronx Emergency Network have joined together with the East Harlem Co-ed, Harlem Emergency Network, Northeast Bronx Emergency Network, WHCR Emergency Broadcast Network, John W. J. Johnson houses, the Grant houses in Harlem, the Dykeman houses up in Bronx. We also have the people from NYSEM, which is New York City Emergency Management. We have people from New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. All are on a special radio and cell phone network. That the purpose of this network is to be able to communicate during times when the network goes down, the grid network goes down, and there's no electricity. And generally, when there's no electricity, you lose your phone, your normal means of communications. And so this network that's being developed and being built out now is to be a network to be used at such a time. And it can also be used at regular times. It's been shown to be very helpful when people have problems or they get in trouble or they just need information. So this is how we see moving forward the ability to be able to communicate when the lights go out. But it cannot be done by just going into PC Richards and buying a device. This takes a little bit of training and special equipment. And what we are opening to different organizations because we are not trying to replace Verizon. This is not something that is used for personal communications. This is used for organizations, businesses, houses of worship to do the work to support the people in an emergency. That's what this is for. However, we also train those people that have those houses of worship, have those organizations, have those businesses, how to set up their own network. And so by each group training another group, it becomes more personal. You develop a more personal situation. However, one group can't speak to 80,000 people. So this level of the group is dealing strictly with organizations, like I said, basically stakeholders. And what we say as stakeholders are people that are in groups, uh, um, like I said, organizations, associations, um, businesses, schools, all of those type of things are what we are connecting to. And if you are in a organization and are interested, you need to take down this number, the email address or this telephone number, and uh, give us a call, because we're getting ready to start up a new training session, because you actually have to be trained, even though I know people say you know how to talk on the radio, but this is a whole different situation. This is a whole different situation. Matter of fact, every radio network has its own way of communicating. And this one is definitely different. So if you're in an organization and you would like your organization to be able to function, even if you're not going to respond, but now you're interested in getting back into business, recovering, this is something that you might be interested in. And for those that really want to learn, want to really get into it from what would I say, a career type situation, this address on the bottom, the wwrl.org, emergency communications training. That is a very interesting way to get some real in-depth information about emergency communications. So with that, I think that's it.
That was very informative and a lot of information to absorb. It was, it had many facets, and some of it seemed complicated. But I'm sure with training, we will all be better informed. Thanks a lot. Next up on our agenda, we will meet Fernando Tirado. Fernando Tirado is with the Department of Mental Health, and since 2017, he has been specifically working on a healthy urban village plan to improve the health of and physical environment of our communities. And without further ado, Fernando, you're on.
Thank you very much, Joetta, and thank you very much, Wally. I see a lot of familiar faces on the comment section. Um, and so once again, I'd like to introduce myself, Fernando Tirado. I'm the Director of New Initiatives at the Bureau of Bronx Neighborhood Health, part of the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. And today I'm going to talk to you about a project that we've started sharing. It's called the Healthy Urban Village. Just give me a second, and I will uh, pull it up. Okay, let's see if it can share now. Okay, so our Bronx Healthy Urban Village project is about looking at communities. How do we help communities, to Wally's point, um, foster well-being one neighborhood at a time? It's not about all the members at a community board at once, and it's not about addressing the needs of the borough at once or even the city at once. People make up communities, and communities are only composed of people. And if we want to build resilient communities that are equitable for everyone, we have to think about how much on a hyper local level we are willing to help to build resiliency. So before we begin with what the Healthy Urban Village is about, I actually want to show some health outcomes in the borough of the Bronx and how these outcomes cause people to become vulnerable to disasters and emergencies, and how it feeds into a vicious cycle of reducing health. So we want to look at health outcomes in the borough of the Bronx and the impact of the environment and experiences on health. It's important to note that health is not only influenced by one's personal choices, right? It's easy to blame people for having poor health or for not taking care of themselves. But there are stories behind the obesity rates in New York City or in the Bronx, the infant mortality rate in Crotona, Tremont specifically, or the rate of violence in Mott Haven and Melrose that make it disparate compared to the borough and even to the city. We know that the physical environment plays a huge role on how healthy New Yorkers are and how healthy folks in the Bronx are. We see here from this example that while the borough of the Bronx is 25% parkland, some communities like the Fordham and University Heights in the West Bronx only has 3% of land available for parks and recreation. And we know that throughout the borough of the Bronx, some communities have higher rates of pollution that exacerbate asthma or that exacerbate other respiratory diseases. We know that social conditions play a huge role in the type of care that people receive and the conditions that they're living in that are detrimental to their health. So, for instance, in the West Bronx in the Fordham and University Heights area, we see how the role that poverty plays as a social condition. Or if we want to look at children's homelessness, we also see in the West Bronx, where 20 to 25% of students are experiencing homelessness, and how that impacts their education, how that impacts their idea of safety, how that impacts their social cohesion or lack of social cohesion. And in areas such as Belmont and East Tremont, the supermarket to bodega ratio is important because it talks about the access to healthy and affordable foods as opposed to highly processed and cheap foods with no nutritional value. This graph is, or this diagram is important to show where COVID hit the hardest in the borough of the Bronx, right? We know that most of these zip codes have many elderly or consist of many naturally occurring retirement communities. There's a lot of elderly folk who live in these areas. And when we say the death rate per 100,000, that doesn't mean this is the number of people who die. This is when you equalize the population based on the entire city, this is their rate of death, which is still pretty high for the city as a whole. We also know that people are vulnerable to disasters, not just the storm Ida, but to other disasters, right, that we've had. And the area shaded here in blue represents a number that approximately 10 to 12% of the population are most susceptible to disasters or most vulnerable to disasters. And a lot of it is driven by health inequities, environmental factors, and the impacts of social economic.
Excuse me for interrupting, Fernando, but we're having the same problem that we had with Wally, which is that we're seeing we're just right now seeing the first slide on the screen. So Wally, maybe you can talk him. Oh, Wally, since Wally solved the problem, I think there's something you can click so that we can make sure that we're seeing the same slide that you're seeing.
Okay. I don't know why that is happening. Let me try something again. Share screen. Do you see a new screen that says health outcomes in the Bronx?
No, not yet. No.
Okay, that's odd. Share screen.
Where it says window.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, it's somebody has to let that screen in. I'm sorry about that. I thought everybody was able to see the screen.
We saw the first one, but we just weren't seeing the following ones. I just think there's something you can click that did it, because we had the same problem with Wally, and Wally solved it. So Wally, maybe you can walk him through what you did.
Do you see something now?
No.
I cannot hear Wally. Wally, you're muted.
You can share the screen.
I thought I was sharing the screen.
You
says
were
share,
sharing
right?
the screen because we saw the first screen. We just weren't seeing the subsequent slides. So you definitely were sharing the screen.
How about now? Do you see anything?
Nope.
We don't see what you had before.
Wait. Just try this. Hold it. Okay.
There we go.
Okay. All right. So all right. So we have the slide now. You just need to click something on the
first
side.
slide.
Wait. Hold on.
Okay. I am going to try to do this one more time.
All right. So you unshared it. Okay. Got it. Great.
Okay. Share screen. Okay, it says that I'm sharing the screen. There we go. Okay, so when I switch it to this view.
Don't switch it to the view. Keep it. Don't switch it to the.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Let me see if I could share this now. Okay. All right. I'll do it this way.
Okay. Yeah, that's the way you got to do it.
All right. Not a problem. So I'll start over very quickly just to show everyone the data I was talking about. What influences health in the borough of the Bronx. Health is also influenced by the physical environment, by social conditions. I showed a graph about COVID-19 rates of death in the borough of the Bronx. I talked about health and vulnerability to disasters, and that the area here shaded in blue represents 10 to 12% of the population who is most susceptible to disasters across all scenarios. And then I started talking about growing healthy communities. So this is where we want to jump into what our Healthy Urban Village is about. And we're looking at community well-being as a health equity strategy. In other words, it's not about what type of programs the Department of Health can bring. It's not about focusing on one condition such as diabetes, but to what Wally said earlier, how can we help have communities help each other to build social connections so that we could improve health outcomes village by village, one community at a time. So when we say community well-being as an equity strategy, it means that in order for us to address public health and medical needs in a disaster, we have to first help people uh, uh, address their everyday systems and the social connections in their communities, and that make sure that these connections are improved and strengthened. Uh, with this, we want to focus on fostering a self healing community model to build equity and well being. So, what does that mean, a self healing community model? It means that communities come together, and the Department of Health would be a facilitator to identify strengths and to define new social patterns to increase their knowledge and skills to help develop a flourishing community. And it's supposed to guide them to a culture of self healing and away from a culture of illness, conflict, and despair. Um, Well-being is how a community responds to emotional challenges, traumas, and burdens it faces, whether it's a large-scale disaster like a pandemic or a small-scale disaster like a building fire. Um, and it is linked to one's local physical spaces, social places, and economic fabric. And we know that well-being requires an investment of social connections by all stakeholders in the community. And those connections, as Wally mentioned, they are between community members, between communities, and between community and government. So, why are social connections important, right? Social connections are composed of the shared information, trust, and a culture that supports the common good, right? The common good is what happens on the neighborhood level. Make sure that people feel safe in their community, that they have pride in their community, that they can trust people in their community. And to Wally's point earlier about communications, if you don't have any cell phone service, or if you don't have it, or if there's a power outage, you're going to have to rely on your neighbors for information. Um, we also know that social connections are a process, not a goal, right? There's no goal, there's no metric that we can say we reach social connections. It's a day in, day out process that one has to invest in. We also know that health inequities resulting from disasters, disease, or social conditions, such as violence, can become chronic stressors on communities, and that health disparities are worsened by the impact of each disaster and emergency, making people more vulnerable over time. So, if we don't invest the time to increase everybody's idea of social connections and feeling socially connected in their community, they become more vulnerable. We also know that social connections are very important for health and disaster recovery than most other resources. And when we say, excuse me, there's somebody out there with a motorcycle or something. So when we say that social connections are important and more important than health and than other resources, oftentimes people think that the government or somebody else needs to invest money to help address disparities that we may have. But it's the ability for communities to have each other's back and to be there for one another that are actually going to get people the other resources that they need. And so, with our Healthy Urban Village project, we want to foster physical, emotional, and social well-being one neighborhood at a time. And so, what does that mean? Right. Well, before we can foster well-being, we need to know what causes a lack of well-being. We know that on the individual level, toxic stressors and adverse childhood experiences contribute to a lack of well-being. On the family level, on the interpersonal level, a lack of social connections or a lack of healthy relationships, as well as the environment, could have negative impacts on well-being. On the community level, we know that people who are disconnected from other people in their community or from government services creates a sense of social isolation. And we also know on the societal level that social constructs like racism and discrimination and other institutional issues diminish support and foster a lack of well-being, and that for all of these levels, well-being grows worse over time if we do nothing. Right? Even if we don't contribute negatively to a problem, if we do nothing or choose to do nothing, it still gets worse. So we want to focus on creating well-being, right? And we do this by improving the physical and emotional self and social well-being of residents at every level. On the individual level, with topics like self-confidence, with regards to disease management, or self-confidence that they can do things to help themselves and the community. Build connections on the interpersonal level, whether that's on the family unit, or whether it's connections with your child's school, or with your other neighborhood groups. On the community level, right, we have to address the physical environment as well as things that impact the physical environment. And on the social level, we need to invest in inclusion and support for everyone who lives in the city. No one is leaving the city, and so we need to make the best out of what we have. And we have to do this. It's not a one-off. It's something that has to happen over time. Right? And a lot of this happens by investing and tapping into neighborhood strengths and expertise. Um, and for institutions like the Department of Health, it's about providing communities with relatable tools to address and minimize chronic and traumatic stress. And so you may have heard me mention about community capital, what community capital is. Again, community capital is not just financial capital or economic capital, but it includes all the other things that exist in every community, right? Human capital, such as our education, health, and skills. Social capital, our ability to communicate and network with one another. Cultural capital, such as our traditions and values. The natural capital, or the natural resources that exist, and the physical capital that impacts our lives daily: housing, infrastructure, transportation, etc., as well as economic capital, right? Our wealth, income, and employment, for instance. And so we want to transform the conditions in which Bronx residents are born, grow, live, work, and age in their communities to promote flourishing and advancing physical, emotional, and social well being. And we know that flourishing communities are achieved by investing all forms of community capital and building on opportunities to improve everyone's life, quality of life over time. And so, from the Department of Health's perspective, we want to elevate well-being as a public health intervention. Right? It's not about, again, um, implementing a program, providing resources for one health issue. It's about looking at things holistically and saying that people don't exist only as the conditions that they have; they exist in the community, and that there are a lot more assets than deficits in a community. We know that well-being is the foundation for resilience and emergency preparedness. And you may have heard Joetta talk about like what's important about disaster management. Your ability to bounce back um, is, or resilience is really the most important thing, because you can't plan for every disaster, but you could plan how you could prepare for every disaster, physically, emotionally, and socially. Um, when we talk about well-being as a public health intervention, it's about connecting people, resources, and systems to help people face everyday challenges as well as extreme events like disasters. And we want to be able to help you to promote community flourishing by meeting the health, wellness, and preparedness needs of everyone, but particularly of particular importance of at-risk populations. We also know that well-being happens at the community level. Right? It requires engagement of trusted community partners and expanding that circle of trust. It goes beyond traditional health and medical systems. And we also know that building social connections is a legitimate and important emergency preparedness action. And this last statement comes from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, who has elevated for years now that community well-being and social connections um, are really the only thing that are going to help people um, before disaster, in a disaster, and in the recovery phase after a disaster. And so our Healthy Urban Village Wellness Plan recognizes the impact of social isolation on specific populations, especially in cities, based on race, poverty, and immigration status. We know that social isolation increases the individual as well as the community members' vulnerability to disasters, which compounds existing health inequities. And by integrating and enhancing the strengths and expertise of neighborhoods, community groups can adopt a self-healing community model to improve their neighborhoods, and their own physical, mental, and social well-being. And so this is, again, a program that has been kicked off by the Department of Health. I'm also the facilitator for a project called hashtag Not 62, the campaign for a healthy Bronx, of which this is being implemented in. And we're reaching out to communities such as Community District 3, as Wally mentioned. And Community District 3 has 80,000 plus people. Uh, but we need to set up 10 villages in Community District 3 because that's where people are have the most trust with one another. Then that's the step we have to take. There's no one size fits all approach to community well-being, but there is the ability to share our expertise and strengths so that we can help all communities thrive in New York City. Now, again, this is a pilot project that's being implemented in the Bronx. There is a community guide that goes with this when one wants to start up a healthy urban village that we'd be happy to share once we identify some people to be a part, who are interested in bringing this to their community. And so I don't know if I have the ability to have any questions or take any questions, but that is my presentation. Joetta or Wally. Yep. Joetta, you're muted.
Thank you, Fernando. And again, you have given us such detailed and correct information. And I'm sure that many of us are interested in following through. I would like to say at this time, for those of you who are interested in following through, if you still have your flyer, there is an email address for the South Bronx Emergency Network COAD. Follow that email address and email us your comments. If you can also, it's going across the screen as well. And you can also contact myself or Wally by phone, via phone. Um, at this time, we had set up for a Q&A, but Bob, if you can tell me how to get to the Q&A, we can have it. If not, we can continue on with the closing.
Okay, so we have some people who are following us on YouTube. If they put comments on the YouTube, in fact, let me just show some of the comments we've gotten so far. This was Barbara Biggs Glover. Said this is a very comprehensive program. Thank you, Barbara. Here's another one. This was very informative. Thank you. I see that Mariah Washington from New York City Emergency Management had chimed in as well. So if they're following us on, we had something from Gene Hill, from Tracy Towers in the Bronx, Erica Davis, Andrea Hay, Williamsburg's Club. So any of those people, Tracy also has been here. So if anybody puts a comment right now on YouTube, we can put that on the screen and Joetta can answer the questions or Wally can answer the questions. Okay, so no questions at this time. Wait, hold on. Someone's typing.
Okay, Wally, the question was, are the slides available? So that's what for Wally and
Yes.
Fernando.
Uh,
Yes, Fernando.
Yes, slides are available, but we would actually like to be able to present it to your community group so that if we had any questions, we would be able to answer them there. As I mentioned, there's also a separate community guide presentation, which is a little bit longer. That's one that would take about an hour, hour and a half to go through. That's a little bit more detailed. And so, if you're interested in either one of those presentations, I would recommend that you email the sben.coad@gmail.com. And then that way they can get in contact with me and we can work with you on getting the materials to you.
and I have the same answer. The best thing to do, because there's a lot of different uh, information that has been given out. So contact SBEN. You can uh, indicate exactly what it is that you're interested in, and we'll be sure to follow up with it.
Again, for the different clubs of the National Association, if you will contact me, and I will put you in contact with both Wally and Fernando, and we will be able to organize if you're planning on following through with the slide presentation to your group or your club. Are there other comments or questions? If not, Bob, would you bring on Renee Paris?
Hi, everyone. Good evening. And my name is Renee Paris Scott from the Riverside Club. It is my pleasure to thank everyone in attendance today. Thank you to all the attendees. And we appreciate you taking your time to join us in these very relevant topics. What a wealth of information it is. And I'd like to thank all the partners in this National Preparedness Month presentation. We have the South Bronx Emergency Network, D3, SBEN, Mr. Wally Abdul Noor, and we thank you very much for a very important presentation on communication and the importance of community emergency prepared response plan. In these times of floods and fires, earthquakes, volcanic activities, your information was extremely relevant. And I think that, like you said, I think a good Christmas gift for all should be that flashlight/radio that you mentioned. Also, the Bronx Division 1 CERT, OEM, Community Board number 3 in the Bronx, the New York City Emergency Management Center for Health Equity and Community Wellness, Mr. Fernando Tirado. Thank you very much for a wonderful presentation and giving us such tools that are needed to build a healthy community. So thank you so much. Mental health is such an important issue, and we appreciate all the information that you have shared with us, and we look forward to getting some of the presentations. In addition, I'd like to thank the New York Consortium, which comprises of the Williamsburg Bridge, the Bronx Club, the New Rochelle Club, the New York Club, and the Riverside Club. And thanks to the technical assistance of the Harlem Emergency Network, Maria A. Prado, the Williamsbridge Club, Elizabeth Matos, the Williamsbridge Club. And once again, in closing, thank you so much for your time. This has been a wonderful two wonderful presentations. And I know that we have gotten a wealth of information from this. And I pass it on to Joetta. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Renee. Bob, you're up. We have a question here. What has to happen for us homeowners and people who live in large complexes like myself to get on board with taking emergency preparedness more seriously? Many of the residents who speak other languages. To Chad, we are reaching out to NYCHA housing, as well as making sure that we reach people who speak other languages. For the emergency information coming out of New York City has a wealth of languages. If you go to 311 and, and ask them what languages are available, they have a ready list of the languages that are available for emergency information. And one of the reasons why we are reaching out in this manner today is because we need the input of all members of the community. And I see Wally has come on, and I know that he has something to say.
Yes, just the idea that you're looking for information for these individuals, that including people with disabilities and other problems. We need you to step up, not just to make it go bad. We need people on this call to now start thinking the next level. Let's start thinking emergency management. Emergency management means helping. And even if it's just helping your next door neighbor, to figure out what their unmet needs are, what your unmet needs are, and then figuring out how to get these unmet needs resolved. That's your start into emergency management. We have to stop looking for someone else to do it for us. We have to start, looking to work for ourselves. That's what this is all about. So, reaching out to the South Bronx Emergency Network or any other, even 311, like Joetta mentioned, will make a difference. You start to yourself start to be a responder. Start thinking start thinking a responder. Because if things really go bad, they tell you right now they're not coming. They actually tell you that. So we need to prepare. And the only way to prepare is to start seeing how we can do it ourselves. And you start with a very simple thing. Like I said, what are your unmet needs? And start to figure out how they are to be resolved. Okay, Joetta.
Okay, Andrea and Barbara, please contact me and I will make sure that you get the information for Mount Vernon and for Brooklyn.
To add to Wally's point, I know communities like Tracy Towers, they already have community meetings, and they have a group of people who come together, and they're like a community on their own, even though it's just the two towers. But having including resiliency training, including disaster preparedness, would benefit a lot, because when you think of resiliency training, you're talking about how do we bridge barriers between people so that we are all able to respond to each other's needs, to take care of one another in the middle of a disaster. So, I want to be able to say that you could you define who's part of your community, and who needs help, And what we're going to do, as to Wally's point, is provide resources and tools so that you could build out your community.
From Mariah, Washington, we are all working together, gleaning resources. All of the information provided is to shift the community out of being scared, but instead to prepare. Thank you. Thank you, Mariah. You can also contact NYC Emergency Management at communityprep@oem.nyc.gov. Wally, I think it's going to be incumbent upon you and I to perhaps put out a follow-up information sheet on contact information.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
We'll try our best to send it out to our networks that we used and our listservs.
Okay. And those that write in to the email address, either the NISM address or the SBEN address, they will get the response, the PowerPoint, the follow-up.
Yeah.
When we have a radio class coming up soon, and if anyone is interested, they need to indicate that. And that radio class, like I said, is specifically for organizations and businesses, houses of worship, just basically stakeholders in the community. And you don't have to be in District 3 because the information, you can take that and start a network wherever you are. And we connect with you. We have people in Fishkill, New York. So that lets you know how far out we stretch. We have people in New Rochelle.
There's actually a comment from Moira, Washington, that resonates well. That we are all working together and gleaning resources. All of the information provided is to shift the community out of being scared, but instead to prepare. I'd also like to add that it's meant to shift the community from being apathetic. It's also meant to help the community to see that the community is not just the 2 blocks around where you live or the 4 walls of your house, but that it includes a lot of people. So we want to make sure that we are in the business of helping communities to self-heal, and to be prepared and understand that disasters are going to come. They don't come in one after another. They may come one on top of another. And so it's important that we are all resilient, and that we choose to build resilience in the future.
Okay. Bob, are there any more comments?
No, I think that's about it.
Okay. Fernando, Wally?
Does anybody else want to say anything? I can also bring anybody else back up, Renee or Eartha, Wanda, Namat.
Would you bring Wanda up?
Sure. You're on mute.
Hi.
We just wanted
to say it was an excellent presentation, and both gentlemen are providing very important information, and I hope we all take heed to their warning. that we must prepare for any other future disasters.
Yes, I have the power.
Okay, if everybody has had their say, we've really given you a lot of information and food for thought. And we know from the reactions that we got that you will take this to heart, and we will be communities in action. So thanks again for everyone for attending, and we'll see you next time.